Hi, I'm Tourmaline, and I am so excited to be a visiting artist and scholar at the School of Art Institute of Chicago in the Low Residency MFA program. And I'm really appreciative of all the work that went into organizing this in a moment of immense change and then another immense change where things are really moving and there's so much uncertainty. It means so much to me that we're figuring out ways to still come together, to be in the room together, whether that's virtually or virtually. I guess we're all virtually in the room together. It means a lot that this program is still happening and we're learning and in study with one another. I'm going to be sharing 3 films, Happy Birthday Marcia, Maryville Fame, and Salacia. And at first I'm just going to talk a little bit about them and then you can watch them. So my work is really about coming together in immense change and uncertainty, whether that's in the midst of shared illness or violence of the police. When we come together, we are in our power. The work that I do, all of the films are about coming together in these moments. So the work is really collectively about lifting up characters who are powerful and filled with clear intent, and saying that we can be in the mess of a thing together and still access our power, our pleasure, and our joy. And when we do that, when we are in the midst of a really hard thing and we access our pleasure, our power, and our joy, and when we come together, we create change that is filled with such powerful momentum that the world cannot help but be transformed. The 3 films I'm sharing are Happy Birthday Marcia, so I'm going to talk about that first, and Atlantic of a Sea of Bones, and then Salacia. So Happy Birthday Marcia is a collaboration between me and Sasha Wurtzel, and it's about the person Marsha P. Johnson, who was a key figure in the 1969 Stonewall Uprising, and later in life was a HIV/AIDS activist and also someone who housed other transgender nonconforming people, who did work around mutual aid, who did work about getting trans people out of jail and stopping police violence against trans people here in New York City. And Happy Birthday Marcia is an experimental film that uses archival footage of Marsha P. Johnson in 1991 talking in a basement in the West Village about her life, and footage that Sasha and I shot with our cinematographer, Arthur Jaffa, with Marsha P. Johnson, played by Maya Taylor, moving around in the hours preceding the Stonewall riots. The film is about these intimate, small moments of care and refusal that really lead up to large events like the 1969 Stonewall Uprising. And the film follows Marsha as she is moving between her vast interior world. Marsha was a person known to have a really privileged relationship with the immaterial. So she would have conversations with people that no one else could see. She would be on the Hudson River offering her clothes up, getting naked as an offering to Neptune. She would be a person who would be having deep conversations, with that unseen, with the nobodies. And the film is often really about that. It's about the people who aren't acknowledged as being somebodies. And it's about the pleasure and the beauty and the joy of being a nobody, whether that's someone that only Marsha could see or whether that's people who are Black and people of color who are queer and trans and non-conforming that only are seen by each other. And it's about being that mirror, being that reflective surface, and enjoying that, finding the moving from feeling the lack that's inherent in that kind of experience to the pleasure that's in that kind of experience. And so the film follows Marsha P. Johnson up into the moments of the Stonewall riots. The next film is Atlantic is a Sea of Bones, and it takes its name after the Lucille Clifton poem Atlantic is a Sea of Bones, which is about how huge violences like anti-Blackness and the transatlantic slave trade continue to haunt a landscape well after they're supposedly over. So it follows this character, Egypt LaBeija, who is a real person, but this is a fictionalized version of her, as she moves about in her life following the deep criminalization of HIV and the gentrification of the West Village. So it follows the character Egypt, who's moving through time, who's moving from a place of deep, profound grief and being really shut down to unlocking and unfolding into an experience of power and remembering who she really is. And it's scored by Gio Wythe, who also scored Happy Birthday Marcia and Salacia. And central to that is what is the sound, what is the feel, what is the haptic of Blackness that is powerful, that is transformative. And that is what Egypt is really offering in this film. And it comes from many of these conversations that Egypt and I had when we were organizers. Egypt was the lead coordinator of this group called Trans Justice, and we, before I was a filmmaker, we were doing work around trans and non-conforming people accessing welfare, because we knew that in order to survive in this moment, it's important to be able to get our benefits. So we had these really big campaigns about, trans people being able to just get into the welfare office, because a lot of times for trans and non-conforming people, when we would go there, the people working there would say, no, come back when you look like a man, or no, come back when you look like a woman. Which, in 2020, maybe people watching are like, wow, this is totally unheard of, but unfortunately it still is a pressing issue, right? Access to life-sustaining benefits, whether it's healthcare or welfare or not being in prison or not being policed, is one of the most pressing issues for our community. So maybe like 10 years ago, Egypt and I were hanging out in a meeting, and Egypt came in with a coffee table book that was about the meatpacking district, which is a neighborhood in New York City in the 90s. And it was all these kind of beautiful photographs of Egypt and her friends in the 1990s hanging out in the meatpacking district. And as we sat there, Egypt would turn the page and she would say, actually this person isn't alive anymore, and actually this person isn't alive anymore. And when she got to the end of the book, it was filled with all of her friends, and she had this real profound realization that she was the only person who was alive still today from that moment who was photographed. And then she had this other profound moment in the conversation where she was talking about no one asked her for her permission to be photographed in that book. And we started talking about art and aesthetics as a way that our image can be misused, and how inextricably linked no one asking her if it was okay to be photographed is to the fact that most of the people in that book aren't alive anymore. And so the film is really about a landscape that is haunted, right, from the AIDS epidemic. And it's about being with community who aren't here anymore. It's about that powerful, immaterial presence. And it's also about being a long-term survivor, being someone who is alive and is still here, still hanging out, still creating art, still making community. So that is the last film that I'm going to share is Salacia, and it is a short experimental film that stars Rowan Amon, and it is about this character Mary Jones, and it is in the genre of a black fairy tale. It, like The People Could Fly, and it takes some of the text from The People Could Fly and incorporates it. And it follows the character, this fictionalized version of Mary Jones, as she is on the run from the police and lands in Seneca Village, which was a free black community that was destroyed to make Central Park. And so Mary Jones is someone who lived in the 1830s in Soho in New York City, in real life, and she was arrested for supposedly stealing someone's wallet. And at the time, she was, sentenced to prison in Sing Sing for 7 years. And during her court case, she, the press, the New York Sun and the New York Herald, made these huge lithographs about her, calling her a man monster and outing her as trans. And one thing that was really powerful to me about her story is, even in the midst of receiving so much violence, she showed up to court in this beautiful, powerful aesthetic, in the most powerful version of who she really was. And the press couldn't deal with that power and made a lithograph of her image. Something that I learned when I was organizing was about the power of aesthetics. When I was learning about the Stonewall Rising, I kept hearing about, and I made a film about this called The Personal Things with Miss Major, who is an iconic Black trans woman who's still alive. Something about how New York City had a moral code that was enforced by the NYPD, which said if you were assigned male or assigned female, if you were a trans woman, if you were a trans man, you had to wear 3 articles of clothing that were associated with the gender you were assigned with at birth. And to me, that's just a wild law. It's what we call anti-cross-dressing laws, and unfortunately, those are still alive in prisons and jails and detention centers still today. So I was thinking about, well, if the police are trying to police people's fashion, right, people's aesthetic, there must be something really powerful about aesthetics that's there. And I was an organizer, so my primary role of being in the world wasn't about fashion or aesthetics. It wasn't about art. But the more I got quiet with myself, I started to listen to how aesthetics are really powerful in terms of shaping the world. My sibling Che Gossett recently wrote about how police are, aestheticizing and weaponizing the color blue. And that really hit me about how the state frequently aestheticizes color, right? The state frequently uses art as advertisement for its benevolence, its progressiveness. And the anti-cross-dressing laws were about about regulating people's powerful aesthetics. And that's what led me to making films and doing art. It was listening to the power that we have in our fashion, about how we fashion ourselves, and knowing that that can transform the world. If the NYPD is arresting you because of what you're dressing, those must be some really hot looks. Those must be some really powerful looks, right? And so that led me to a deep appreciation of our community and making art about it. And that's what Salacia is really also about. It's about the power of self-fashioning. It's about the power of being in a fugitive relationship with the fashion police, who are also always the NYPD and the police. It's about the power of coming together and being a mess of a thing and still doing that profound magical work. And it's an experimental short that cuts between Mary Jones and Sylvia Rivera, with 2 friends, Miss Janice and this person Bob, on the pier in the 1990s on the Christopher Street Pier on the Hudson River, talking about what it means to be with one another and how important that is. So there's a bit of a time travel element. So those are the 3 films: Happy Birthday Marsha, Atlantic Sea of Bones, and Salacia. And I'm looking forward to having the Zoom conversation and having conversations with everyone, and then also the studio visits. And I want to, again, offer my deep appreciation for all the work that went into gathering us together and allowing us to be with one another in the midst of a mess of a thing and still finding ways to be powerful. So thank you.